Today I'm joined by Ciena with Scott Sukup from Ciena, a longtime Anaplan customer, with Joe Yoon, also from Ciena, and from Nadia Dasuki from Rolanto. And that was the implementation partner. We're going to talk about what happened at Ciena, how they've used Anaplan, where they began their journey, where they are now, and what some of their future plans are. Typically, we like to hold questions to the end, to the last 10 minutes. I don't find that to be very valuable because we have lots of people out here who have questions about Anaplan. They're either working with Anaplan today and they'd love to have access to these professionals, which I'm excited to have. And also people who are thinking about Anaplan and they really want the raw answers, like just tell me like it is, because that's what we want to do. Okay, so with that, Scott, well, let me start with introductions. So Scott, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, thanks, Dave. So I'm Scott Sukup. I'm a Ciena. I've been there for 25 years. I've done multiple jobs, from quality engineering when we used to actually manufacture our equipment. Moved into IT for 12 years where I did data warehousing, integrations, BI, saw a lot of implementations there while I was there. And then for the past 7 years, I think I've been 7 years. It's hard to keep track of all the years where I've been, but I'm now I work in the finance space, right? And I'm currently the Anaplan platform owner. The COE reports into me, model builders, as well as the admin side of the house, as well as I also have a small data team, and also have another assurance role, which is we keep track of price books and discount approvals, right? So sort of forming that architect and that assurance role within Ciena.
Joe?
I'm Joe Yoon, Senior Manager for Global Sales Compensation at Ciena. So I've been with Ciena for about 2 years now. Previous to Ciena, my experience has been in sales compensation, sales support, sales strategy, and sales analytics. At Ciena right now, with sales compensation, I do also manage sales planning, quota, and territories.
And Nadia?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Nadia Dasuki. I'm the Chief Sales Officer with Rolanto. Rolanto, we're a very proud Anaplan partner, but we're an AI-centric advisory-led consulting firm based on the West Coast. So very excited to be here today. Unfortunately, my partner in crime, Prakash Hariharan, could not be here. He's our Chief Planning Officer. And he comes with a deep Anaplan background. He used to work at Anaplan. He worked for one of the first enterprises that implemented Anaplan. So he's got a very unique lens from customer to partner and with the platform company.
Yeah, it's unfortunate Prakash couldn't make it, but I will say he was probably the chief architect, if not the chief architect, one of the chief architects of the sales performance management practice at Anaplan. So he helped develop all of our models, the ones that helped us get into incentive compensation management, territory and quota, everything that we do there. And Prakash left a few years ago to work with Rolanto, and we're delighted that he's still part of our ecosystem and he's advising companies like Ciena. So Scott, maybe we could dive a little bit into Ciena and what you guys do. And I'm going to ask you some deeper questions about.
Sure. Let me ask you a question. How many people have heard of Ciena? Okay. How many people, I've seen people use their cell phones today. I know Anaplan is a cloud platform. I'm sure most of us go home and we stream some sort of content. Well, Ciena is a company that builds the networking equipment, fiber optic based, that moves all those bits of data and voice from one place to another place. So we do it across the world. We do submarine deployments in the oceans around Africa, around the APAC region too. But we are the number one company that does that within North America, top 2 in Europe, and very, very significant role in Asia too. So basically we enable all the data flowing that happens across this world and across the globe. So that's what we do. And we do it, it's all fiber optic based. And so even though you haven't heard about us, everything you do, we're part of everything you do. So
You're the company that everyone uses every day and knows nothing about.
exactly.
But I know you just had a tremendous Q1, right? I mean, coming on.
Yeah. I guess they're now equating us with some AI because I hear AI is becoming a thing. It's moving towards the front of the data center, and then once it starts moving out of the data center, it's going to come across our networks. So yeah, we're starting to be an AI player.
And you mentioned that the Anaplan practice inside of Ciena reports into you, and you use the word center of excellence. I know that there's lots of people out here who are responsible for leading centers of excellence, trying to get them off the ground, or thinking about it. Can you just tell us about what a COE looks like for you and how you've structured it?
It's a good question. So we've grown a bit. We had a lot of also outside advice on how we should do this, but generally speaking, our CEO today, I would say, has pretty much three pillars. We have a model building team. We have a really good solution architect that handles all the enterprise. So like right now, we're building out connected planning, and he's working like with Prakash and others, but he's building that whole architecture, how we're going to connect everything. Much like you heard that Anaplan's doing with their apps, we're kind of doing in a bespoke way. He has 5 model builders that report into him. We focus our model builders on certain areas of models. So we have someone who's really focused on the revenue assurance models. We have model builders focused on the cost center expense workforce planning model. And then we have some folks that kind of float around some of the different bespoke models we have. But really, we have that model builder community, and then we have someone who's also a former model builder who does more of the admin work for us. He tries to make sure we have segregation of duties and we're doing the right thing from an audit perspective and compliance perspective. And then again, we have the data. Everyone you heard today, everyone's talking about data. So we do have a lot of governance around data. We have people that have a small team that is trying to make sure the data coming in can be trusted or at least be understood. And then also how we get the data out is also making sure that data is published and curated properly. So
Are there COE leaders out in the audience today? Anybody leading a COE responsible for it? Yeah. So the question I get from lots of our customers is it better to have somebody who is a model builder and teach them the business, or is it better to have someone who knows the business and teach them model building? And I know it's not as simple as that, but what's your philosophy on that, Scott?
That wasn't planned. That was not a planned question. We've struggled with this a little bit. What we find is that, at least in our business, the business experts, they're trying to grow their career. They're trying to be better at the business they do. So trying to have someone who understands the world of financial planning analysis, someone who understands the world of sales compensation, those people are not eager to take a sidestep into Anaplan model building, right? So what we have found is that what we're trying to do is always get someone who understands. We bring people that are fairly young. Effective model building team is fairly young, and so we're trying to get them to understand the business more, right? By working more closely with the business partners like Joe, right? So in other words, it'd be important to me for have a model builder who has enough time to spend with Joe and her team and what they're trying to do, and then figure out, and we use the term artisan within the company. We want someone who is really technically savvy. I mean, who could probably at least solution architect certified, people who could probably become master Anaplanners, and then really we want them to spend time learning how the business works, so that they can then figure out how to deploy the technology to fit the business. So it's more of the technical, learn the business.
And I know one of the reasons why you brought Rolante in was just because of the relationship you guys have with Prakash, and he's been there and he's done that before. And I always say to an Anaplan customer, the worst thing that can happen to you if you have a partner that comes in and tells you and builds what you want instead of what you need, because they should come in with some perspective on the thousands of implementations that they've done in other places. And I think that's been some of the value for Rolante. Nadia, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think, one of the values that we have is we've done this at so many different areas in the enterprise, and we've seen so many different challenges. So our goal is to really advise our customers throughout this process and help, a lot with the user acceptance and, actually the functionality of the tool, from a user experience standpoint. So, our goal is to make sure that, it's not just designed well, but the people are actually using it the way that it's intended to be used. And I think that was something that we tried to bring into the Ciena conversation.
I think just in sales and revenue operations, when I talk to people, I said, I've been around long enough to make every mistake you could possibly make, and I know which ones to avoid. Yes. And I'm not saying that our partners make mistakes, but they certainly have a lot of experience and they can bring that to the table, and that's very, very beneficial. So Scott, can you just tell us about the journey that you've been on with Anaplan?
Yeah, I think as you'll see here, we've been propagating, I guess now the term is bespoke models. We started with 3, which was our workforce planning, cost center expense, and then our revenue assurance.
So you started finance.
Started finance, yes. And actually started HR. HR was our first model that delivered and stabilized, right? And then we kind of, as you kind of see here with the different colors, we started hitting, different business units. So, we moved from 2 business units up to like 5 business units, and now we're moving into over this year and next year, covering 7 different business units, right? But it's been about really, trying to find adjacencies, trying to find willing partners to travel with us. If you've done Anaplan, the change management is a very, very, it's a very hard thing to overcome. You have to work a lot with the different users. We have users who, I've been doing this for 25 years, and one of my favorite stories is, I remember I did a supply and demand sort of an application like almost 25 years ago, and it got people able to see. Well, you couldn't see Oracle. You couldn't see like all the parts you had to manage. You could only see one part at a time in their application. And so I built something that was cell based with the SQL Server backend, where you could actually in a spreadsheet you could actually filter all that. You could actually see what you need to go action. And my first experience with change management was I went up there, meet with the users, and someone had printed out all the spreadsheets and was going through them because they didn't know how to use Excel. Right? So the same thing happens with Anaplan, where you have people who are into an Excel world, or are used to doing things on their own. They are the process, right? And so what we try to do is we try to find the adjacent people who are willing to kind of step in, and then we can deploy something that's sort of tangential to what we built.
I love that. Like, they are the process.
They are the process.
I've heard someone describe it that way, because a lot of times if we're talking to somebody that's a revenue operations leader and we ask them how they plan, they just say, we just do. In their muscle memory, they've never really documented it before. And for them, when we start to talk to them, especially about our applications, we say, look, we're not saying it's a prescribed way of doing it, but we certainly have some best practices that we bring to the table. And they find that almost every company is following many of the same steps that they all follow, but they've just never documented it or put it together some sort of a prescribed way.
Right. Yep.
And I think the value of that is that you don't have to rebuild the process and the infrastructure at the beginning of every single year. It's something that outlasts the architects, and it just keeps going.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So when you're thinking about the roadmap for Anaplan at Ciena, how do you do it? Do people submit formal requests? Do they tell you what they need? Do you evaluate it? It's a question, because I talk about AWS a lot, because they have what they call a federated model, where they've got people centralized that are responsible for building models that get propagated throughout the company, but then they also allow some freedom down in the field for people to build models themselves. And it's sort of a risk that way, but they like the flexibility. So what's your philosophy?
Well, I think the first thing we do is you try to, with the exception of so the HR, the workforce planning was critical. The head count is a large part of our expenses, so you had to kind of build that to get into expense planning, right? And so otherwise we try to stay within like the FP&A, user community. Our manager, who is the head of planning, spends a lot of time with the executive. She knows where the company's going. She knows where the pain points are. So a lot of times it's her setting that direction. Yeah. This is where we need Anaplan to go. And then we take that, and then I take it, and we figure, how do we go get that?
We've sort of been on the Anaplan discipline conversation and COE. Does anyone have any questions about COE? Any things that you'd like to ask directly of Scott, how he manages anything? You can just raise your hand. No, it's a quiet. If anyone has questions, just kind of, okay, here we go, right? Steven.
I'm always interested about how you work with business leaders to educate what is possible. Because people often don't know what technology can actually deliver. So how does that work?
I'll start and let you finish this one. Okay, sure. Because she works really close with parts of the business. I think really it's, a lot of the business leaders, they get a lot of the art of the possible from different companies. Different people come in, even within Ciena, right? IT may want to say, hey, we can do this with AI, we can do this with BI. So there's always the art of the possible there. I think it really has to come down to understanding what's going to add some value, what's going to make their lives easier, right? Or what is it they don't have to do anymore. And And I think sometimes it's the, the customers who have the loudest opinions about things actually are the ones who give the strongest signal on what you have to do, right? So it's really kind of listening, a lot of listening. It's kind of also a lot of, placing some bets. But it's really, and sometimes, firstly, I don't know that we are going to be successful until we're successful, right? So it's more of an art than a science, I would say. Yeah. Might not the answer you wanted, but it's fair.
Did you have a formal process by which we had meetings with the business leaders around intervals?
Not so much. No, I mean, Ciena's not that formal internally and stuff like that. So.
Did business unit owners ever come to you and say, I heard what you did, I heard how you helped Joe, which we'll talk about in a second. You think you could help me with Anaplan?
We are getting, yes. So we are, so yeah, definitely favorable opinion travels. Not quite as fast as ill favorable opinion, but it does travel. So, but yeah, but that does help too. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And one of the things from, just to quickly note on that question, from a Rolonto standpoint, we really try to involve the business in our rapid prototyping. And what we find is that really helps with the adoption to see and kind of continuously see the value in the platform if they're constantly involved while we're, playing around and, prototyping.
I hear a lot of our customers talk about the time to value for standing up an Anaplan model where they go to the COE on Monday with a problem and then they have a model that's been built by Wednesday and then they're off and running on Thursday and they're like, oh, that was fast. And we've been working on this problem for years and we've just been suffering through it. And had I known, I would have talked to you guys a long time ago. So I think that's one of the trademarks of a great COE is to be able to do that. Joe, let's talk about how Scott helped you and just about the background of the organization, what you're really responsible for. Let's do a little bit of a deep dive. For sure. And give us an idea of some of the scope and then where you started, where you went, where you are now.
Absolutely. So as Scott mentioned, we had our initial Anaplan models sitting in FP&A, and Ciena is a unique case because sales comp actually sits under the FP&A organization. In my previous experience, I'm used to it sitting under sales or sales operations, sometimes HR. So this was kind of my first realm from a finance perspective, and there's a little bit of a balancing act for sure because we report to a VP of finance who is very finance brained, and then my stakeholders are of course the sales teams, the sales managers and the leaders who are not so finance brained. And so it was a really unique journey, I will say. We brought on the Anaplan sales planning model, I think 3 years ago, and that was before I joined. And in the 3 years, I think a lot of the teams, they grew. So our sales operations from the regions, they grew. The requirements really shifted. So last year, we came to kind of a turning point where it was very much a make it or break it situation with Anaplan directly. We had a post-mortem following our last year's planning cycle, and it was essentially mob mentality, to put it, kind of nicely, where everyone, all the sales operations leaders, even the direct sales, they came to us and they essentially said, we don't want to work with Anaplan. We've been seeing delays. It's not giving us what we want. We can't plan with this. And so we came out of that, session, really spinning our wheels and trying to understand what we need to provide to our customers, which is sales. And so that's really where Rolonto, the partnership came in, and it was a true partnership in that sense. We had all this feedback and all these enhancements that came from the postmortem, and we essentially said, how do we go about implementing everything, and turning it around in several months. And so when Rolonto came in, and I will say, we full credit to our internal Anaplanners. They're so talented. And when Prakash came in with his team, he assessed our model and he said, listen, the backend data, the model is built really well. It's just the user interface and the user experience that you're going to need to improve. And that's what's going to shift the mentality of your customer group. And so the focus is really on that, is really transforming how they interact with the model, what they input, how they make adjustments, and how they essentially plan and map their territories and their quotas. And so this year, in the past few months, we accomplished something really great where we have our full sales population in the model now. This was a big kind of ideal state that we wanted to get to. And we have our partners team, we have our channels teams, we have our overlays, and all the structures of the different sales teams are also incorporated into our model. And then, our process is a bit extensive where the budget, the planning process starts with budget and then it goes down all the way to the individual contributor seller. We also have an audit and validation phase of this process, and the reporting and the validation rules were also fully implemented into the model, and it allowed everyone to stay in the model, remain there, where that was a big challenge as well. They had to go outside of the model to do some analysis, get some insights, but it really shifted things around, with this partnership and just the evolution.
So this was the field sales organization and sales operations coming back to you saying, we've had a terrible experience.
Exactly.
And it sounds to me like they did what salespeople do is they started to negotiate with an opening offer of, let's tear it out. And then you negotiated back and say, well, let's improve the user experience.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So in the old model, what were some of the things that were they missing? How long was it taking you to get your compensation plans out, your territories and quotas? How accurate were they? Was that an issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think really the biggest challenge was delay in time and lags from the model, just of how the user interface was interacting with the end users. And so we gained a lot of time. It took months for us to get our quotas out, and we have annual quotas. We have a pretty decent sized population of sellers, and it's multi-channel. It's very unique cases, very nuanced. And so being able to get that efficiency, that productivity, I would say also a big win is just kind of the synergy with the other FP&A models. So being able to pull in data. So we were asked to put in historicals for customers, 3 to 5 years of historicals, employee performance, what their attainments were, as well as Salesforce opportunity pipelines. And so all that data that was coming from, different models or different systems was able to also be integrated to deliver greater insights as well.
There's a really good piece of research I read recently from Sales Benchmark Index. I don't know if you know these guys, but they literally collect sales benchmarks from thousands of companies, and they've kept it for, I think, going on 15 years. And they looked at companies that achieve what they call a fast start, which means that their sellers leave their sales kickoff with their territories, their quotas, compensation plans in hand, versus those that do not. And those that do not, it's often like 2-3 months into the quarter, where in maybe even 6 months into the fiscal year, where they're still trying to bring their sellers on board. Those companies that achieve a fast start on average grow at 18% year over year. Those that do not are 3%. And only 27% of the companies start with a fast start, and maybe like 5% of them fail to achieve that fast start after they go. But the ones that don't almost never recover. So it's really the compelling case for improved sales planning is you're going to lose a quarter if you don't do it. And if you happened to you last year, it's going to happen to you again next year. And it's just a repetitive cycle. So it sounds to me like you guys, made some headway in the past, but there was improvement to be made, and you brought in Rolanto. There was a lot that was right, but your customers just weren't seeing that. Right?
Exactly.
So for compensation, are you responsible for designing the compensation plans?
Yes, okay. I would say. Ciena is also kind of unique in this scenario. We technically have one comp plan, but we try to merge all the structures of our different sales teams into this one comp plan. And so that actually added to the challenge of how do we plan and distribute quotas appropriately for these different teams. You know, our customers go from Verizon all the way to Amazon, Google, and it's just a different business structure and business model that we have to kind of adapt to from a sales team perspective. So yes, definitely in the overall design and the overall process, my role is kind of unique because I'm product owner, but I'm also process owner. And then, you know,
So you ensure people get paid every month.
exactly.
And so it's sometimes you see a bifurcation between the comp owner, the person that's responsible for the calculation, and sales operations does territory and quota. But it sounds to me like you have a role that bridges these two universes. And
Exactly.
Really, because the compensation person is the one that gets blamed for all the inefficiencies in the upstream process. So you could have the most well-designed compensation plan, but if you can't get the territories and quotas in the hands of the reps and sell them to them, then it becomes an issue. So you are involved in the upstream as well, territory.
Yeah, I get the good, the bad, the ugly all coming at me
Yeah.
for sure. I think my role is more facilitating. So sales operations, along with of course the sales managers and the leaders, they are responsible for actual quotas. But me and my role as kind of the intermediary, I am responsible for allowing or facilitating that process to go into a system or a model, you know, as we did.
And for 850 sellers, and before you went and did the redesign, you know, with Scott and with Nadia, you said that it took you a while to get the compensation plans out, territories and quotas. After you did everything, was there a difference in the way that the organization performed?
Definitely. I think, you know, as I mentioned, the synergies between the models. We actually had one global sales ops leader come back after the cycle was finished, and he said, I didn't know Anaplan could do these things, have these functionalities, and I'm so glad that we were able to stay in this app, in this tool, to do all of our audit and our validation. Just as an example, our Europe and Middle East, Africa region, it's about 150 sellers. That full validation of whether quotas are distributed properly, territories and accounts are mapped and assigned accordingly, that entire exercise maybe took 4 days.
Right.
Versus the previous year, I think it took 3 weeks. And so having that reporting and delivering the insights just in real time was a huge time saver.
Was there a difference in the accuracy? How much rework did you have to do in the past versus now?
Absolutely, yeah. Huge minimize,
This is a huge
drastic
facility.
reduction.
Yes, in other words, they're able to, in the app now, they're able to do something and see the impact of it.
Yeah.
They don't have to, it's right there immediate, which is
Absolutely.
yeah.
I know I haven't been in sales or revenue operations. I found like a lot of times the people above you, maybe even the CRO, they just want their compensation plans and territories and quotas out on time. Yeah. They don't necessarily care about the pain that the operations team goes through
Definitely.
and going through that. And it's hard to make them care about that. And they start to care if they've missed a quarter because of these types of things. And it's our responsibility to explain how we can fix these. So my experience has been, when you start to go through a planning cycle, some of the first questions are, where's the information I need? How do I get it? How do I keep it updated? How do I share it? How do I get it back? And then how do I disseminate it to the organizations that need to be a part of it after the fact? Mm-hmm. So when you build this living platform that's in place, what you did, Scott, I mean, what's the difference now in the way that it's done versus how you did it even before you had Anaplan?
We have this one pretty diagram. It shows 2019 with our sort of our architecture, right? Sort of our business architecture with applications where you have like Oracle's doing this thing, Salesforce is doing its thing. And then, you know, you have Workday in there. And then the whole planning platform is just a bunch of Excel spreadsheets and people, right? Emailing back and forth, right? And some very, well-engineered processes and macros and all that stuff. It's just amazing you could almost launch a rocket system with Excel. But, you know, so what we have now is that, and you've kind of seen it on this morning's keynote, we really now have this, Anaplan for us is kind of, we have a planning platform now It has some other apps as well, but Anaplan's the core there. Anaplan is the one that brings it all together. Anaplan also led the build out of our Snowflake data warehouse, because we were going to overrun the ability of the Oracle data warehouse we had. So the IT team supported us with building up it was driving a lot of this connectedness, right? And having it there. So we now have really a planning platform, and the number of spreadsheets. We're using spreadsheets differently now. It's like spreadsheets used to be the source of truth, and you could have multiple sources of the same truth on different people's desktops. Now you have people using Excel more for like in-process analysis, sort of quick, bespoke take. Oh, I need to understand what's going on here, but again, we've gotten rid of a lot of the spreadsheets that were essentially our sources of truth for a forecast. All that is an Anaplan now, from everything from on the OpEx side to the revenue side. We have a P&L built out. So everything is well connected. And we're also, too, more importantly, learning. You wouldn't know, a couple of years ago, we would not have thought how important sales comp planning was to, the ecosystem, right? Now we start building this thing a certain way. Now you understand, well, we now understand how it's connected from getting information, but we also see how it can be connected for providing information, right? So there are concepts of also like, what are the edge models, things that kind of the dead-end models, that is sort of gone away now, where everything is kind of its own center of its own universe in a way it's all connected, which has been sort of a really interesting learning for us over the past.
Once you launch territories, quotas, compensation plans, the day after, something changes inside of the business. Somebody resigns, you hire somebody else. How are you managing that?
All our HR data is integrated into the Anaplan model for planning, and so this is updated, refreshed on a regular basis, and we can see when there are terminations, we can see when there are transfers from roles to roles or regions to regions, and then our sales operations leaders, of course, they adapt, they create new quotas. And so we're going to expand a little bit more on that, but the data is all integrated.
In operations, they often say one of the hardest things to count is people, because it's such a moving target all the time. And roster management is one of the greatest frustrations for the organization. So you're doing all that with the Anaplan. So the operations people know when somebody joined the company that they need a quota.
Yep.
Are you tracking the changes in the quota between the individuals? Are you reassigning it from person to person?
Yeah, so that's kind of in our next phase of enhancements, I would say, is to have like versioning where a person could potentially have two roles. They switch into roles, and you could see what their first role quota is and territory is, and then their second role. Right now, it's more of a override that we're doing, but that is something that we're looking into building.
Yeah, it's when you've got all these quotas that are sitting out there in the field, occasionally things can happen where quota is not covered, or somebody parks it in a vacant territory, which means that somebody else's quota is underallocated, which means you're drawing bigger checks off the company checkbook to pay people for commissions and things like that. It gets really expensive.
Absolutely.
So I think it's one of the mistakes I've seen companies make is they invest a lot in the upfront territory and quota process, but they don't think about post-implementation and how they're going to manage those moves, adds, and changes after, because those add up. So I think if I had any advice for anybody that's going through this now is think about that day two and how you're going to manage that. So with Rolanto, tell me about your engagement here, how you guys got involved and how you've helped other companies.
Well, actually, we met at Anaplan Connect New York last year.
Yes, last year. It's our anniversary. It is.
And so I think at the time, Scott met with Prakash, and you guys had a discussion, and we were brought in for just some initial work. But I think we were able to quickly align, and we created such a great partnership. And I think Prakash adds so much thought leadership into Anaplan in particular to help, again, with a lot of those challenges that I think Ciena was facing from, the business confidence being low in the platform. So that was a big focus area for us. But we met here last year.
You have to talk them off the ledge, like, hey, let's make this thing work, or yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, that's our,
Well, I think one of the things too is, so we sought out Prakash for a reason. One, because, one of the things we've learned is we're in an interesting industry. We're in telecom equipment. We manufacture, but we're not manufacturing, right? And what we build and what we deliver is all project based. So like 60% of the business is new networks being created. Like for example, all the AI stuff going on, right? So these big cloud providers are now trying to build out more data centers, right? Like Anaplan's trying to build more data centers, right? So, these projects their networks are not just cut and paste, right? Not like widgets we're shipping out. We have to build into their design, right? So one of the things it's like, when you're looking at how do we plan for the business, how do we actually, do the planning, the revenue planning, the forecasting, it's helpful for us to get, and that's why we went for Prakash. We know that he had experience in our industry. He understood our industry. He understood what, a salesperson in Ciena does because he understood what a salesperson in another company did, right? So that experience, I think, was really useful to us, right? So it was a combination of the industry experience, and it was also, too, we needed someone, again, with young model builders, they think they can solve world hunger. They learn the tool, they know the manual, they do it very well, but it's really about, we needed someone sort of, someone more seasoned, more time in the industry. It's seen trends play out, over time, over 25 years. You sort of see the same things comes full circle sometimes. But I think it was really important because we also wanted that, not someone to actually do the work, but someone to have the sort of the hand on the shoulder, right? And we wanted our model builders to fail, and then you have someone like Prakash and his team to sit there and say, okay, this is what what you could have done if you thought about this, you thought about this, right? Now we are, again, so that was very important to us because, when you have a model or an application like we had that was really, it failed in the way it failed, because it was built for a different audience, it was a different user community, different requirements, it's a big blow to the person who built that model, right? But that was one of the things too, is that we also understood we need this growth opportunity within our team, and that's why we reached out to someone with that experience and who actually come in sort of with the velvet glove kind of mold and shape and turn a very good solution architect into someone who could really listen to the business and can learn through this experience, right? Yeah. That's why we went for.
Well, in telco, revenue recognition is complicated because
Very
you have these
complicated.
massive projects that go on forever, and it's king.
Yep.
Right? So you're always looking to accelerate revenue. Are your salespeople, are they compensated for bookings, revenue, margin, all of it?
All of it.
Exactly. So they really care about project management, don't they? Yeah. And ensuring that projects get completed and you get the revenue recognition so they can get paid.
For sure.
So are you using Anaplan for any of that backlog management and tracking of what's in the pipe and what's due?
Oh yeah. So our main revenue assurance model, I think 80%, 85, IT did this, so this like 85% of all the business application data comes in this one model. And then we apply thousands and thousands of rules based on customer contracts, and they're all different, right? So we basically replicate our revenue recognition engine in Anaplan, right? So that we can, you give us a PO, you give us an opportunity, we can tell you exactly how that revenue is going to profile based on when it's going to trigger, based on all this other information. So, what was, and again, this is a stat I've used before, to do that without Anaplan in the early days, it was 30,000 clicks or interactions with spreadsheets and other tools, right? So right now, a new PO comes in, it's right there, no clicks, and it's profiled out, and then the FP&A person can actually look at it and say, does that make sense? Is there something else I know about this?
Yeah.
I put some human intelligence on top of this. So that's what that revenue assurance model is doing, right?
So
Every day.
Do the reps, do they ever get to look at that revenue recognition piece of it? I know I told you.
No.
Because that's how they get paid, right? Well, I came for 15 years in telco, so I have a lot of trauma.
Yeah. And I'd love to add to the partnership piece as well. It really was, like I mentioned, a collaboration where Prakash and his team, came together with our team, our Anaplanners, model builders, but also, he was,
Users,
he was directly there with the end users from end to end. Him and his team at Rolanto, they wanted to understand directly what they were looking for, what the feedback was, what they needed essentially, and turn that into something. I say, sales comp planning for Ciena, it was kind of a guinea pig in terms of this partnership with Ciena and Rolanto. That's where, we found the real success is that collaboration and that, cooperation between teams.
Joe, I'm sure there's someone in the audience who's about to embark on the journey you just went through. What piece of advice do you have for somebody that's just where you were a year ago?
Patience, I would say. But also, I think for me personally, it was really valuable to be familiar with the model, even on a technical side, just to understand. And this is what Prakash is really great at as well, is kind of teaching and also mentoring. Even though I'm not a developer by any means, being able to understand the data that's coming in, how things are built out into the model, how it's going to come out as an output to the end users was extremely valuable. And so I would say just try to absorb learnings and, the cross-functional communication and dialogue has to be constant. Like I was with the sales operations leaders, the sales teams, almost on a daily basis of, they were in their testing, they were doing their references. Every day it was very much, is this what you're looking for? What can we do? How do we improve it? Tell me exactly what you need.
So you really immersed yourself in the implementation, so you could learn what they were doing as they were going through it.
Exactly. And then it's, vice versa as well. Like if an Anaplanner or a model developer came in and they said, it's not going to work this way, but we want to try a different angle, bringing that back to the end users, it's just that closed loop of feedback all around.
Scott, how about you? What's your advice?
I don't know. Yeah, the more I hear Joe tell the story. Of course, I lived it. But just to hear you tell it right now, I think what's really important is that it's important to it takes sort of a community to do this stuff, right? It's there's a lot of companies out there doing things. There's a lot of partners out there doing things, and I think I sound a little cheesy here, but coming to events like this where you can meet people, hear the stories, and hear what people are doing is important. And I think this is where if I were not doing this for the past couple of years, I would not have been able to provide Joe the resource that we needed, right? And then the Anaplan story at Ciena would have been totally different right now. So,
Nadia, there are people out there in the audience who are contemplating, jumping in the Anaplan water. But they're on the fence. Like it's complicated. It can be expensive. We're not sure what we're getting ourselves into. What would you tell them? Well, really, so what's the value that you've seen a lot of your clients get? Like what makes it worth it?
I think it's being able to derive the actionable insights. I think when the platform is used, to help drive the decision excellence, I think, is so much value, but also the connected planning aspect. And I think that's something that we focus on Rolanto. It's not just, let's say, from a sales perspective, but it's also we understand from finance, supply chain, and really to connect those insights together is where we see so much value for our customers. And with Ciena, I think that's, that was our ultimate goal, is how can we have that be our North Star to start kind of chipping away at that ultimate goal.
Yeah. And Scott, one last question. You mentioned, and I love this, the people are the process. What happens to those people when the Anaplan becomes the process? Personally, do they feel threatened by it, or are they afraid of being replaced? That they've lost?
I think we've been doing this long enough where people are not afraid of that. I think there are people who are, we have some good stories of people who are celebrating the fact that they're not having to manage 40 spreadsheets right now.
Yeah.
Right. They're able to go and spend more time learning their space. So if you're an FP&A person for supply chain, you get to learn more about what supply chain is doing, those trends. Right. So it's all about freeing up those experts who got into finance for a certain reason. It wasn't just spreadsheets, but to actually become finance people.
Well, I know in the operations and finance functions, you end up spending a lot of time of administrative work.
Yeah.
And that's not really where you want to be.
Right.
I mean, that should be automated, especially now AI is coming on. That's going to take responsibility for that. You don't go away.
Yep.
It means you get to focus on the more opportunities, growing the business and maintaining that.